Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Judman Talks Music YouTube channel. I know it's been a few weeks since the last video, but everyone seemed to really enjoy it and I had a blast making it. So today, I'm going to be talking about the 6 Degrees album by Charlie. So for those of you who don't know, Charlie is the alternate alias of French electronic musician Duumu, who proved himself to be one of my favourite artists last year especially, with his Talk EP, which was my absolute favourite EP of the year, and as you might be able to see, I am wearing Duumu merch for that exact EP. So Charlie is like a side project for Duumu where he releases an album annually and has been doing so since 2017. Every album under this alias has been very short, usually coming in somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes in length, and each individual track only being like between 1.5 and 3 minutes most of the time, which usually only 1 or 2 tracks even reach close to the 3-minute mark. So they're very short albums, but I promise that they make up for it in quality. And honestly, one of the main reasons I want to talk about this album is just because it's a relatively unknown project, and I think more people need to get around to listening to it because it's music that really does just have a lot of heart and soul in it. I haven't listened to any Charlie albums before this one. This was my first. I checked it out. I had no idea what to expect. I wasn't sure if my expectations should be high or low, but honestly, they were blown out of the water. Since all the tracks on this album are so short, I'll probably spend very little time talking about each individual track, but even if this is a shorter video, my main message is just, whether you're an electronic music fan or not, I think this album really deserves your time because it's just beautifully constructed, and it's not even especially long to listen to since it's only like 15 minutes in length. So honestly, without further ado, let's just get into this album.
One eternity later.
Okay, welcome to the future everyone. The year is 2020, March the somethingth. The world is on fire. The coronavirus is destroying society as we know it, and I've got nothing better to do round about now than come to you from my emergency music review bunker, where I am currently in quarantine to finish a video that I should have finished months ago. So if you're wondering why this looks completely different than from what you probably saw like 30 seconds ago, that's why. So the first track of this album, Antarctica, is very atmospheric. It's one of the many tracks on this album that is less concerned with being, you know, your typical dance type song. It has no beat really, it has very little percussive sounds in it to begin with, except for it's got this really nice train going over a train track pulsing sound that comes in very early and stays throughout the whole thing. It gives this pulse that keeps it driving forward the whole time, which I really appreciate, and it sounds super lovely. This track reminds me a lot of Tide from the Talk EP, which was one of my favourite parts of that whole thing. I notice a lot on, you know, those classic ranking channels and whatever, whenever they review an EP or an album, it seems to be just some unwritten rule that interlude tracks always, or intros, go immediately at the bottom, and I've never really understood that like at all, because a lot of the time, especially in the case of something like Talk, I thought that was one of the highlights of the album. You know, just because it's not a dance track, just because it doesn't have a beat doesn't mean that it doesn't artistically offer anything of value. In fact, it's often quite the opposite. So one of my favourite aspects of this track, and just a lot of Charlie / Duumu's music in general, is the way that he creates an atmosphere using these long, wide, constant synths that hang at the bottom beneath everything. So even if you put on top of the bass, the beat, or anything else, it's just this underlying thing that even in the moments where there's not much happening, you still feel this sense of atmosphere underneath, which really just brings all of his music together and takes it to the next level for me. I think that is one of the main aspects of Duumu's music that does that for me. So the second track, Weathering, is very much in a style that I would not have expected for Duumu / Charlie to create. It's like a jazz trio track with bass, drums, piano, and then it's also got this very creepy atmosphere of, you know, those long underlying synths that I was talking about in the previous track. It's very short. It's like a minute. It's basically just like here's this idea that I had. It doesn't really expand upon it much from exactly how I described it. It's not an absolute highlight of this album, but it is very interesting to hear something like this on the album nonetheless. So then we come to the third track, Here Now. This is far and away my favourite song on this album, and it is quite possibly up with a few other songs that have come out this year. I know it's pretty early into the year and it's pretty hard to tell. This song, along with probably just Ubi by Glacier, is probably my favourite song that I've heard this entire year. The first time that I heard it, I instantly fell in love with it, and that's a rare thing. There's a lot of times you can hear something, especially more exciting banger type songs, you can hear something and instantly think, wow, you know, this really grooves. But I feel like a lot of the time with those songs, the songs that take the least time for you to like are usually the ones you get sick of the fastest. So it's a very rare circumstance for a track like this to come along that I love so instantly, but I've also loved so consistently as well over time. It's been a good few months now, and every time I listen to this track I enjoy it just as much, if not more so, which is especially impressive considering it's only like 2.5 minutes. Notable things about this track: it's the first time that anything on this album has had a beat of any sort in it, and oh my god, it's so good. I love, especially just the emotion is the main thing that makes me really put this song like up there. The way that the beat and the tempo itself is like so slow and laid back. Every single kick hit just makes the whole flow of the song work super well. It's very slow ballady style song, and it just pulls off what it's going for perfectly. A lot of the guitars / ukulele, I can't tell which instrument it is. I'm not good enough with string instruments to know the difference. Reminds me a lot of the amazing guitar line / ukulele line that I always loved in Duumu's Monster Cat debut. Another thing I love is the vocals. Much like Tied and Blinded from the Talk EP, Duumu does what I believe is probably his own vocals here with filtering on it. I don't know how he does it the way he does it, but it always does the job for me. It always sounds super nice, and this is probably the best example of that. You can tell the lyrics themselves are very personal. You can just tell with music like this, it really does emotionally resonate with the person that's written it, and they put their heart and soul into it, and this track exemplifies that for me. The climax, like the main drop, absolutely amazing. The way that it vocally leads into it by having the line of the song here, comma, and it has a bit of a pause, and then when it says now, it's like everything just turns lush and opens up. It's only like 20 seconds long maybe, but it is perfect in every way. It's honestly some of the best 10 to 20 seconds of music I have ever heard in my entire life. I could not say enough good things about this song, so I'll try not to go on about it forever, but it is easily one of my favorite songs. In future I might be able to say of all time, but it hasn't been out for long enough to tell.
New faces in this new place.
The fourth track of this album, called I'm Gonna Miss My Friends, the vocals are like the main driving force of this song. It's the same kind of filtering, the same thing as in Here Now or the other songs like Blinded and Tied that I mentioned previously, but it definitely takes the lead a lot more here. I feel like this track has enough emotional weight and enough to it that it could have had a beat, but it doesn't. I'm not saying that it takes away from it in any way, but I'm saying is a lot of the shorter tracks, especially the ones that are like a minute and a half, I love them, but they feel more like they've got that intro or interlude track style, whereas I feel like this could definitely feel like it's been expanded to a full proper track. It's a very acoustic track. It's led a lot basically just by those vocals and the ukulele. Everything else is just that atmospheric sound design that Duumu always does so well, which really takes this to the next level. You know, I've heard a lot of that style of just vocals and ukulele music before, and it often doesn't do much for me, but there's just something about the way that Duumu always does that deep and rich atmosphere that always keeps me engaged. So track 5 is called Pavilion. It probably reminds me most of Antarctica, if anything else, from this album. There's no vocals, there's no ukulele or anything like that. This one is very just like atmospheric electronic. It's got this very glimmery, fast line that goes through basically the whole thing. If it could take me anywhere, like in imagination, it definitely feels like an in the sky floating through the clouds. It's very, very pretty. Once again, I think it's one of the shortest ones, only coming to like a little more than a minute long, but it's super, super beautiful. It only has like 3 elements. That sparkly synth line that I was talking about before on top of like piano, but it's just a sign of how much he can do with very, very little, and it's very impressive and a very nice short little listen. So track 6 is called We Didn't Know, and this track is actually one of the more fascinating ones to me because it is filled with Minecraft sounds, and that is something that is very nostalgic to me. It's always been unfortunate that Minecraft never tracks the hours played like Steam does, because I am almost certain, but I can't prove, that Minecraft over the years that I played it is probably the video game that I put the most hours into out of anything. Maybe I'm looking too deep into it, but I've really extracted a meaning out of this song with the title We Didn't Know. So it's filled with Minecraft sounds, and it's this very melancholic, it's a very nice but sad song throughout it, but it comes to this very peaceful resolution at the end, and I think the title mixed with the Minecraft sounds is supposed to be very nostalgic. The title itself, We Didn't Know, being one of those things where it's commenting on, you know, when we were younger, and this meaning absolutely applies to me. You didn't know how simple and easy things were back then, when all you had to do was go to school, study pretty simple stuff, all things considered, and then you just got to go home and hop online with your friends and play shit like Minecraft for hours at a time, and just the beautiful, wonderful memories that we made in that game specifically. Times that I'm sure all of us wish we could have back. And it's a bit sad, but I think it's super amazing the way that he's managed to create this kind of deep meaning just through the use of sound effects, and the way that it connects with me and other people my age and a similar age. Sonically, it's not one of my favorite tracks, but like the way that has the Minecraft sounds, and I think it's in reverse, the chord progression of Subwoofer Lullaby. It's just a super, super beautiful track. This track, track 7, is called Mess. It is the longest on the album, you know, the longest coming in at 3 minutes, and it definitely feels like it's supposed to be the lead track. I'm pretty sure it was released as a single shortly before the album came out. It's got a beat, it's got vocals, it's got everything to be that kind of single, closer to a more traditional electronic track. It does a really good job in volume, but also just in the climactic nature of the track, smoothly flowing up and down as it goes. It's got a great balance of instrumentals and vocals, much like Here Now. It's got this main line that basically goes throughout the whole track. Considering it's usually mostly a pretty down tempo and kind of nice song, whenever it's going like in and out of the main sections, it actually like gets really sonically, like a lot of stuff going together at a very high volume, and then it just cuts to nothing, which I think is something that usually has a pretty powerful effect, and it's certainly no exception here. The drop section is very progressive in the nature that it starts off with very little, not much going on, and I don't know, usually I like when tracks decide to do this, but in this one I don't actually like how it starts, but as it progresses over time and adds more and more elements, I like everything it adds. I like the vocals, much like in Here Now. I really like the vocal lines that aren't actually lyrics, that are just singing that goes underneath a lot of it. Sounds super, super nice. It's very texturally rich. That's nothing new. That's basically everything on this album is like that. I like it a bit, but it's definitely not my favorite of the album. The 8th track is called X. It's one of the shorter ones. It's one of the most, acoustic instrumental ones. It's very similar, I think, in tone and just in general vibe to I'm Gonna Miss My Friends, but with no vocals present. It's basically just a ukulele duet, but it's very well balanced, as in, it's not here's the lead part and here's the supporting part. They very much both play an essential role in a way that I think is written much more interestingly than, what I just explained, when it's here's the melody and here's just, texture and filling in the middle. Both feel like they're playing their own thing, and it's like a conversation where they work together to make a really, really nice finale track and an end to just one of the most atmospheric and heartfelt and short albums that I've ever heard in my time. And so that takes us to the end of this album. Now, just because a lot of the tracks are so short, the most important stuff that I want to say is here when I'm talking about the overall album, because it's only about 15 minutes in length. I don't want the shortness of the album to take away from people thinking about its artistic value, because despite its length, every minute of it is enjoyable to me, which is not something that I can say for a lot of music. In any album, there's usually at least 2 or 3 songs that I don't enjoy, even if it's an album that I overall really, really like. And just the way this manages to, even though all the tracks often sound quite different, the way they all feel very similar in tone, and the way that I can just tell so much heart and soul was put into them, just really takes it to the next level for me. And the most important thing that I want to send home is, I know a lot of my friends that'll be watching this aren't necessarily electronic music fans like I am, but this album is just pure acoustic, raw, heartfelt music that I think anybody should be able to enjoy. So no matter who you are, and it's so short as well, it only takes 15 minutes, please take the time to listen to this album, because it is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, and it really just cemented Duumu / Charlie's place in my heart as probably my favourite person, my favourite creator in the music industry at the moment. So take the time to listen to it, it won't take long, and it is honestly definitely a 10 out of 10 album for me. So thank you very much for watching. I know this video took a long time to come out, but I'm temporarily out of work because all non-essential businesses have closed in Victoria. I don't have that much else to do apart from uni work and play Animal Crossing, so maybe I'll get a couple more videos out as well. I know for a fact that if I do another video, it will be on the Temple Inward EP by Glacier, so please stay tuned for that, because that is also something that I have a lot of love for. See ya!